Hi everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why some tasks feel like a breeze, while others make your brain feel like it is stuck in traffic? Have you ever noticed that you can track a conversation and eat lunch at the same time, but trying to read two different books simultaneously is impossible? Today, we are diving into the architecture of the human mind to see how our brain decides whether to handle things one at a time or all at once. At the heart of this research is a big question: how does where an object is located in our field of vision change the way we process it? To find out, the researchers use something called System Factorial Technology. Think of that as a high-stakes diagnostic tool that helps scientists figure out if our brains are working like a serial processor, which is like a single-lane road where only one car goes at a time, or a parallel processor, which is more like a highway where multiple cars move forward side by side. In their experiments, the team gave participants a task. They had to look at schematic drawings of semicircles that varied in two ways. One feature was the saturation, or intensity of a red color. The other was the angle of a small line drawn inside that circle. Their job was to classify these images into categories based on specific rules. The researchers wanted to see what would happen if they moved these features around. Would they process the color and the line differently if they were next to each other, stacked on top of each other, or separated by a gap? What they found is pretty fascinating. When the features were overlapping or right next to each other, the brain really liked to work in parallel mode. It was efficient and fast. But the moment they started pulling those features apart into different spots, the brain hit the brakes and switched to a serial, one-at-a-time approach. It is almost like your brain has a spotlight. If things are close together, the spotlight is wide, and it catches everything at once. But if you move things far apart, that spotlight has to dart back and forth, jumping from one piece of information to the next. This is important, because it tells us that our attention is not just about where something is in the physical world. It is also about the objects themselves, even at small distances. If our brain sees two features as belonging to the same object, it is much more likely to try and process them together. But as soon as we make them look like distinct, separate items, the efficiency of parallel processing drops off. The study used some really clever modeling to show that it is not as simple as just saying one or the other. In reality, most of us are using a mix. We toggle between these strategies depending on how hard the task feels and where the information is sitting on our screen. Now, let us talk about the limitations, because no study is perfect. One thing to keep in mind is that the researchers had to be very precise with their setup. They used a small group of people in what we call a small n design. While this gives them incredible detail about each individual brain, it means we have to be careful about assuming everyone processes information exactly the same way. Also, the tasks were very controlled. In the real world, the visual environment is messy. We have distractors, movement, and varying levels of background noise that might change how our personal spotlight shifts from one thing to the next. So, what is the big takeaway for you? If you are trying to be more productive or learning a new skill, think about the layout of your information. If you need to stay focused, don't spread your tasks out or have 5 different tabs open across your screen. Grouping related items together physically can actually help your brain work in parallel mode, making the work feel less taxing. On the other hand, if you are struggling with a complex problem, maybe break your workspace into distinct, separate zones. That forces your brain to shift modes, which can stop you from getting overwhelmed by trying to process too much at once. Future research could go even further. It would be amazing to see if real-world experiences like driving or training athletes show these same patterns in different environments. Maybe we could eventually predict exactly when a driver's attention is going to snap from parallel to serial and design better warning systems that account for that. This study is a big step in understanding the hidden machinery of how we see the world. It shows us that our focus is flexible, but it has very real spatial limits. Thanks so much for hanging out in the Mind Lab today. If you found this dive into how we process information interesting, please do us a massive favor and hit that like button. Sharing this with a friend or colleague who is always multitasking might just help them understand their own brain a little better. So go ahead and share this video, and of course make sure you are subscribed and have that notification bell turned on so you never miss a deep dive into the science of why we do what we do. Until next time, stay curious.